So, Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking about your book, 75 Masterpieces Every Christian Should Know. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. I'm a little bit sorry that the Indian summer is kind of ending here in Oregon, but um, I guess I can adjust to the rainy season.
Yeah, that's too bad. I'm kind of cold here in Colorado, but
Yeah,
um,
we're not cold yet, just wet.
nice. So, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Could you tell the audience what inspired you to write 75 Masterpieces?
Okay, well, I think I think there are really a couple reasons that I came to write the book. The first is really that in my own life, I've been so just personally enriched by great art and great music, great literature, great films. I've found that oftentimes the really high quality art will take me to a different place of understanding in my understanding of God, in my understanding of the world, even in my understanding of myself. And I really think that some of the great Christian art through the ages has probably touched me more deeply, and influenced me more profoundly than really any works of theology or spirituality that I've read. So a lot of it is just the thing of saying, okay, this is something that's personally really had an impact on me, and I want to be kind of a cheerleader for getting Christians involved in great art. And along with that, I think the second thing is that as someone who is a student of history, I'm always interested in history. I realize that most Christians just don't have a very deep sense of their heritage. Most Christians, for the most part, especially within the evangelical movement, Christianity may as well have been invented by Billy Graham in the 1950s, for as much
Mm,
historical awareness as they have. And I thought, I'm someone who's interested in the development of theology and the church, but I'm also interested in the heritage that we have as believers in the creative sphere. And so what I wanted to do is try to put together in one readable volume a look at some of the great art and the people behind it. Art, music, literature, film, architecture, all the arts, to say we have this amazingly deep heritage, something of which we can be proud.
absolutely. And of course, we're from the creator, which is why we're so creative to be able to do these masterpieces. So we're just enjoying God, really.
Exactly. As Tolkien said, we are all sub-creators. In our creativity, we're working with the elements that God has already placed within the universe, and we just rearrange them to create something new. So it's kind of an amazing creativity is like an amazing sort of partnership with God, I think, and that's one of the reasons why I think art has this kind of inherent spiritually transformative power to it.
Absolutely. As an Anglican, I don't do this a lot, but I'm just going to interject that, evangelicals have been, I guess, of late, the last 20 years or so, starting to kind of delve into the first 3 centuries of the church, philosophy, and then great books like
hmm
yours have got it where they do understand there was more than just what's happening now. So just wanted to put that plug in. Um,
No, that's exactly true. And what's interesting, uh, if you look through my book, the Anglican tradition is extremely well represented in my book, and I think that's largely because there is something very inherent in kind of a sacramental and Eucharistic view of the world that actually tends to feed and nurture sort of the creative spirit, the idea of the depth of the meaning of our symbols, that they actually can become a place for the presence of God. I think that actually opens the door to art, and I think that's why the Anglican tradition and the Catholic tradition have actually produced more great art um, than any other of the Protestant traditions have. So
I'll agree with the Anglican bit, and I'll
kudos
take
to the
even more.
Anglicans. Yeah.
So, but that's true, and that kind of leads me into the next question. With so much visual art and music and literature that's available, how are you able to trim it down to the top 75?
Well, two things to say to that. First of all, when I call it 75 masterpieces every Christian should know, what I was not striving for was to create like a 75 best list. In one sense, that's interesting, but that's probably kind of impossible. So instead, what I was looking for are works that would represent the diversity within our heritage, both a diversity of styles, of different artistic forms, diversity throughout time, as well as try to represent the Christian tradition outside of only just the narrowly Western tradition. Though I don't think I was able to present like Eastern Christian works, and as much as I would like to, they are definitely represented as well. But anyway, initially, kind of getting back to your question, initially the book was going to be 101 because that's kind of a natural number. And when I began to work on it with the publisher and we realized that it was just going to make the book too long, we decided to cut it back. And believe me, the cutting back was painful. I left out a number of works I would have really loved to have included. But I'm happy with the 75 that are in here just because of the diversity of creative expression that they produce. And that there are things that are everybody's familiar with, like Handel's Messiah or Frank Capra's the film It's a Wonderful Life. Everybody knows those, but then there are also a lot of works in here that are much lesser known. And so it's a variety of revisiting some things you know and getting hopefully exposed to some things that you want to explore and discover.
Right. You should come out with another book, The Lost 26.
Exactly. In fact, I seriously have, just for fun, created what my next 75 masterpieces would be if I was ever given the chance to write a sequel to this. And that actually wasn't that hard to do. And I keep discovering new things that I would love to include. So I'm having to think through how I can find ways to help keep expanding this kind of list of works that are worth people spending their time to discover.
Right. So, that's a good point, too. So as you were researching for this book, were there any masterpieces that you were surprised had a Christian influence to them?
Well, with this particular book, these what I tried to do is actually limit this book to artists who would self-identify as Christians. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are a lot of artists whose work I love, a lot of writers whose work I love, who are not would not self-identify as Christians. And I thought for this particular project, I wanted people to see the breadth actually within our Christian tradition of artistic merit. So everybody that was in the book is somebody who I knew pretty quickly I wanted to represent because of their faith. But what I did learn along the way is some of them, the depth of their faith was much richer, and their faith story was much richer than I had imagined. I knew, for example, that Jane Austen was the daughter of an Anglican vicar, and that she was a person of faith. But as I did the research, what I discovered is beyond that, and what little bits of her faith definitely do show through in her work, but she is also someone who wrote a collection of prayers for use with her family kind of devotional time. And so a little side project I did is I actually created a book called The Prayers of Jane Austen that puts this little collection of prayers back into circulation, because most even Jane Austen fans don't know about these prayers. And they are beautiful, self-aware, and deeply humble and lovely prayers. They kind of remind me of the Book of Common Prayer in their kind of cadence and tone. Very beautiful.
Very nice. So you said that you're putting that together, or it's already out?
Yeah, that's actually a book that's already out on the market. There are only 3 long prayers that have been discovered that she wrote, but we put them in a little gift book, which is lovely little design. And I wrote an essay about Jane Austen for the book, and so that's also another little book project that came out last year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, obviously artists and writers and musicians and actors would draw a lot of inspiration from this book. But for those Christians that aren't artists, how do they draw inspiration from it?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, one of my hopes is that it would be inspiring to people who are creatives themselves. But I also wanted it to be a book that would appeal to the average person, and so I wrote it without using a lot of technical language. You don't need to know a lot about art going in, and I really tried to tell interesting stories from the lives of the people who were the creatives. But I think it's important for everybody. An example that I kind of sometimes use when I'm talking about this is talking about the difference between fast food and gourmet food. I mean, every once in a while, I really get a longing for a McDonald's hamburger, or a Chick-fil-A sandwich. But, if I made that my entire diet, I would be grossly overweight and probably sick and in bad health. We can't live off fast food. And I think in the cultural world, there is what we would think of as a fast food. A lot of the movies and novels and pop music that's out and easily available. It's easily accessible. It's entertaining. It's fun. And I'm not saying it's bad. I can enjoy watching the latest James Bond movie, for example.
Right.
But or Star Wars or something like that. But that shouldn't be our entire cultural diet. We should expand ourselves and to expand our intake to really partake of some of the really great spiritually and emotionally nourishing art that's been created. I like to think of it as the fact that, why only eat fast food when we have these master chefs of the imagination who've created this amazingly wonderful food that we can nourish our lives with. And so what I'm calling people to is saying, outside of the stuff you do for entertainment, don't think of cultural intake as just for entertainment or just for distraction, but actually something that can be life-changing, because I think great art can be that.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
a long-winded answer, but that's my kind of passionate belief.
Not at all. I think you put it quite eloquently. I wanted to reply, but I decided I'd probably just get myself in trouble. So what you said. So, here's the obvious question. Of all the 75 pieces that you put in the book, what is your personal favorite? Or I'll make it easier by saying you can have 2.
Oh, man, that's kind of like asking, which of your children is your favorite. I mean, I don't know that I could actually pick 1 or 2, just in the sense that at different points of my life, different novels or poems or pieces of music have at that moment in my life just really made an impact. And probably at least 2/3 of the works in this book are ones that have made a deep impact in my life. A few are in there just because they're important, but mostly these are ones that have impacted me. But if we put the question a little bit differently, and you give me just a little more room, what I would say is the probably the best meter for that is which are the ones I go back to again and again and again. And that's an easier question for me to answer. I mean, C.S. Lewis, for example, is a writer whose work nourishes me again and again. Every time I go back to C.S. Lewis, I get something new out of it. And Lewis is represented by the Chronicles of Narnia in this book. Or T.S. Eliot, especially his collection of poems, The Four Quartets, is a book that's a poem that's really nourished me spiritually, like a prayer that I can pray and meditate on. Gerard Manley Hopkins would be a poet that's that way too. Bob Dylan. I love Bob Dylan's music, and his lyrics always make me think more deeply about my life. And I'll revisit Bob Dylan. And Bruce Cockburn is another musician like that. Vincent van Gogh, always I see something fresh in his vision. Rembrandt. Yeah, you see, you get me started, it's hard to get me stopped. But those are some of the people I can go back to again and again. And that's the thing that I would want to communicate to the listeners is don't let art, and I'm using art in the biggest sense, not just visual art, but don't let all this great art and literature and music be about some sort of cultural elitism. This is art for everybody. And, it's like, to go back to our, gourmet food thing, it's like our palates may need a little refining to fully appreciate great art, but it's worth the little extra effort we have to put into it to get something richer out of it.
Beautifully said. All right, well, we're about to run out of time. I want to mention the name of the book again, 75 Masterpieces Every Christian Should Know, The Fascinating Stories Behind Great Works of Art, Literature, Music, and Film by Terry Glaspie. Baker Books, so I suppose you can buy it at any quality bookstore or online.
It should, yeah, it should be available widely online or at your bookstore. And the publisher was good enough to allow me to use color images of some of the artwork and films we're talking about. So they actually made it a beautiful little book. So if you've got a friend, if you're interested in the arts, I think you find this a unique and fun book. Or if you've got a friend who is, it could make a great gift. So it was fun to write. I hope people will have the opportunity to use it as a way to explore some art they didn't know before.
I'll put that piece in as well, since I did read it, is, it sounds like it could be this thick volume, but it's not really small either. It's a beautiful book, beautiful pictures, but each one that you talk about is roughly 4 to 6 pages with some really colorful anecdotes, a little bit of history, some of the things that helped move that era. It was really well done, and it's not something that's going to drag somebody deep. They'll just be able to enjoy it. It's just like a light read that you could, just like a fiction. Except better.
As I said in the introduction, I like to think of it like it's like a fistful of invitations for you to begin to explore on your own. It's like this doesn't give the definitive, but it'll tell you enough about Van Gogh that you might get your curiosity aroused and want to learn more. Or, with other people who represent the book, that hopefully that same experience. But thanks for the kind words about it. I really appreciate that.
Surely. Well, thank you again for coming on and talking to us about it.